I didn't argue. I just closed my laptop, paused the auto payments, and let silence do the talking. From that day forward, every dollar became a choice, visible, tracked, and completely reversible. My name's Jason. I'm 44 years old. I live just outside Chicago, in a house I bought with the money I earned from 16 years in logistics and distribution. A job that doesn't impress anyone, but that has kept a roof over 3 heads that aren't mine. When I married Hannah, she was already a mother of 2. Zach and Laura. They were kids then, 7 and 11. Small, loud, needy in ways children are supposed to be. I remember thinking, this won't be easy, but nothing good ever is. I should have listened harder to that voice. Charlie, their biological father, was a fading ghost by then. A man-shaped memory who showed up on Christmas with a half-hearted grin and a Visa gift card. One year he gave them both matching t-shirts 2 sizes too small and then told me I was lucky they were letting me in. He had the gall to call it luck. In the beginning, I didn't come in trying to be anyone's dad. I kept my expectations low and my sleeves rolled up. If the faucet leaked, I fixed it. If Laura got sick at school, I left work early to pick her up. When Zach broke his wrist skating, I drove him to urgent care while Hannah sobbed into a dish towel. I never once asked to be called Dad. I figured respect had to be earned, not demanded. So I earned it, or at least I thought I did. I paid for their phone plans, orthodontics, soccer camps, birthday parties, and class trips. I sat through the school concerts and the late-night math homework tantrums. I paid the bills when Hannah's hours got cut. I pretended not to notice when Zach rolled his eyes at every word I spoke, or when Laura started calling me Jason instead of Jay. I pretended not to feel the cold creeping in. The truth is, over time, those thank yous stopped. I can't remember when exactly. Somewhere between the 3rd phone upgrade and the 3rd time Charlie missed another visitation weekend. At first, it was subtle. A forgotten birthday card. A missed Father's Day. Then it grew bolder. Slammed doors, eye rolls, the kind of silence that's louder than screaming. And then came the words that snapped the thread. It was a Thursday. Cold. March, maybe. Dinner was something simple, pasta, garlic bread, a tossed salad no one touched. Laura was scrolling on her phone, slouched in her chair like it owed her something. Zach was spooning sauce into his mouth like it was a race he didn't want to win. And then it happened. Laura didn't even look up. She just said it, flat as a weather report. You're only here because you pay. Zach didn't flinch, didn't even blink. He added, yeah, if Mom wasn't broke, she wouldn't need you. I sat there, holding my fork, not tasting the bite of food on my tongue, not tasting anything at all. I looked at Hannah, waiting, wanting, begging her silently to say something, to correct them, to scold them, to defend me. She didn't. She reached for her wine glass and said, "That's not fair, guys. Jason's done a lot for us." That's what she called it. A lot. 16 years of stepping in where another man stepped out. Reduced to a lot. She didn't deny their words. She didn't push back. She just softened the blow like she always did. Smoothed the edges so no one had to look too closely at what we'd become. I stood up, walked into the kitchen, closed my laptop, and paused the auto payments. Netflix, gone. Spotify Family Plan, gone. Amazon Prime, grocery delivery, unlimited data, school lunch credits, auto refills for prescriptions. Gone, gone, gone. It wasn't rage. It was precision. A quiet inventory of what I gave and what I got in return. That night, I lay awake and stared at the ceiling while Hannah snored beside me, her face peaceful, mine carved from stone. I remembered the first time Laura called me Daddy. She was 8. We were at the zoo. She was tired, hungry, scared of the polar bears. She grabbed my hand without thinking and said, "Daddy, can we go home now?" That night, I cried in the car. I didn't even know why. I just felt like something had finally clicked into place. Like maybe I wasn't just some placeholder. Like maybe I mattered. I remembered the time Zach broke down crying after school because Charlie had forgotten his birthday. Again. He was 12. I drove him to Dairy Queen and let him scream into his cone. I told him, Sometimes people aren't who we need them to be. That doesn't mean you're not worth loving. He didn't respond. He just stared at the melting swirl and whispered, "You're not my dad." That one stayed lodged under my ribs for months. I remember the Christmas Eve I drove 3 hours to find the last available Nintendo Switch because Laura said everyone had one, and she didn't want to feel like a loser at school. I remember the year Zach totaled his bike, and I worked overtime for 6 weeks to buy him a new one. Same brand, same color, better brakes. I remember giving and giving and giving. I remember waiting for it to matter. It never did. They saw what I gave, but not who I was. I was a bank account with legs. A handyman with a car. A steady, unshakable stand-in for the real thing. The man who gave them DNA and gave up everything else. And somewhere along the line, I started to believe it too. I became efficient, silent, predictable. I gave without asking, showed up without complaint, swallowed every slight with a smile that grew heavier every year. Until that night at dinner. Until they said the quiet part out loud. "You're only here because you pay." They didn't yell. They didn't throw tantrums. They didn't even realize they were breaking something. But they did. They cracked something inside me that night. Something I had been holding together with stubborn hope and duct tape promises. And after the crack came the silence. That's the part they never saw coming. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't lecture or demand or make some grand declaration. I just changed the password to the Wi-Fi and went to bed. It wasn't rage I felt. It was clarity. Like the lights in the house had finally turned on after years of flickering. Like every harmless comment, every act of casual dismissal, every silent betrayal, had been waiting in the corners, just out of sight, until now. It started the next evening. I came home early from work. My meeting had been canceled. I walked in through the back door and heard them before I even took off my coat. Zach's voice, low but sharp. He's just a walking credit card. Laura, from the living room. Yeah, when he stops paying, Mom'll just find someone else. Laughter. Not cruel. Not loud. Just casual. That was the part that cut the deepest. Not the words themselves, but how ordinary they sounded in their mouths. As if I was a temporary appliance. As if I could be replaced like a malfunctioning fridge. I didn't walk into the room. I didn't say a word. I turned around and walked back out to the car, sat in the driveway, and stared at the steering wheel for 10 full minutes. That's when it hit me. They didn't hate me. Hate requires energy. Hate means you still matter. I was nothing to them. Nothing but digits on a bank statement. That night, I printed every single receipt. Every bill, every transfer, every auto payment tied to my name. Tuition fees, co-pays, sports registrations, DoorDash subscriptions, birthday party bookings. Cell phone bills stretching back 6 years. Amazon orders for school supplies. Prime Video rentals they never even told me about. Over 6,000 pages. I stacked the papers on the kitchen table like I was preparing for trial. Then I started canceling. Netflix, gone. Unlimited data, gone. Laura's Uber account, tied to my card, removed. Zach's Spotify Premium, canceled. Insurance, reduced to basic coverage. No more dental add-ons or vision perks. You want braces? Ask your real dad. I didn't touch the essentials, not yet. But I drew the line between needs and wants, and for the first time in years, I started treating my money like it belonged to me. 2 nights later, I called a house meeting. No yelling, no drama, just clarity. Hannah sat across from me, tired-eyed, wine glass in hand. Zach lounged sideways in the armchair like he was at a dentist's office. Laura sat cross-legged on the floor, phone glowing under her hoodie. I looked at them all and said, "From now on, this household runs on agreements, not assumptions." Zach smirked. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means if you want to be treated like adults, you act like adults. Responsibilities come before privileges. If you want my support, you show me respect. If you don't, fine. But the lifestyle goes with it." Hannah frowned. "Jason, they're just kids. They say things they don't mean." I shook my head. "No, they meant every word. I've heard enough to know that now." Laura mumbled something under her breath. What was that? I asked. She rolled her eyes. Nothing. Just whatever. You're acting like we killed someone. No, I said calmly. You just buried the one person who had your back. That's all. Zach scoffed. This is about money, right? You're mad we're not grateful enough for your precious bills. I leaned forward, steady. I'm mad because you made it clear I don't matter. That I'm replaceable. That I'm only here because I pay. So I stopped paying. Simple. He laughed, but it cracked at the edges. This is ridiculous. I stood up. I've been ridiculous for 16 years. Not anymore. They didn't respond. Hannah stared into her glass like it held a better version of our life. I went to bed without another word. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The fallout didn't take long. Zach's first tantrum came 2 days later, when his hotspot stopped working. His school laptop wouldn't connect. I heard the door slam, heard him shouting down the stairs. Why is the Wi-Fi off? It's not off, I called back. It's password protected now. You changed the password? I did. What the hell, Jason? Ask your mom. He stormed down the stairs. This is pathetic. I need the internet for school. You also needed it for Twitch streams and Call of Duty downloads at 3 a.m. I figured you could use a little detox. Just give me the password. No. He blinked. Seriously. Dead serious. He turned to Hannah, who was folding laundry in the hallway. Are you going to let him do this? She didn't answer. That was her answer. The next day, Laura's iPad stopped working. The Apple ID was linked to my account. She came downstairs with it clutched to her chest like a dying pet. Did you mess with my tablet? No, I said without looking up from my coffee. I just removed my card. But I can't download anything. Then you can't download anything. She glared at me. You're doing this on purpose. I set the mug down. Yes, I am. Hannah tried to smooth things over. She always did. That night, after the kids had sulked their way to their rooms, she sat beside me on the couch. You're not wrong, she said. But this isn't the way. What is the way, then? She was quiet for a long time. I don't know, she whispered. But I don't want them to hate you. I looked at her. They don't hate me, Hannah. They don't care about me enough to hate me. She flinched. I kept going. I'm not punishing them. I'm just removing myself from a role I was never accepted into. I'm not their father. I'm not even a stepfather. I'm a financier with a garage code. She touched my hand. Jason. They're kids. No. They're old enough to speak the truth. And old enough to live in it. She didn't respond. 3 days passed. Then came the real twist. Zach came down the stairs with a backpack. A suitcase trailed behind him like a wounded animal. I'm moving in with Dad, he announced. Hannah froze at the sink. I raised an eyebrow. You talked to Charlie? Yeah, he's got a spare room. Says I can crash there. Good, I said. Let me know if you need a ride. Zach hesitated. You're just letting me go? I'm not stopping you. His eyes narrowed. You're that pissed, huh? No, I said. I'm that done. He waited for someone to beg him to stay. No one did. 10 minutes later, he was gone. 10 days passed. Then Hannah got the text. It was short. Sent at 11:43 p.m. Zach, of course. Couch. No AC. Dad's charging rent. Making me cook. She showed it to me without a word. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just nodded. Good. He's learning. That Friday, Zach came back. He didn't knock. He didn't demand. He stood at the door with a duffel bag and eyes like someone who'd looked into a mirror and didn't like what he saw. I opened the door. He said, I get it now, but not like before. I can't go back to pretending. I nodded. You can stay. As a tenant. $350 a month. Quiet hours, chores, accountability. I'm not your dad. I'm the homeowner. I still care, but I'm no longer volunteering for free. He swallowed. Okay. We drew up the agreement. He signed it. He paid rent. He was late once, but explained in advance. He washed dishes without being asked. He asked how taxes worked, how to budget, how to change a tire. Not asking for handouts, asking to learn. And that somehow mattered more than Dad ever did. Zach wasn't the first to test the waters. Laura followed 2 weeks later. She didn't pack a bag like her brother did. No dramatic goodbye, no announcement at the door. She just stopped coming home after school. Started spending the night at friends' places more often, staying later and later on weekends. When Hannah asked, Laura would shrug and say, "It's just easier there. No rules. No tension." She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. By the time August rolled in, the house had shifted. There were echoes now, in the hallways, in the empty chairs at dinner, in the living room where the TV stayed off and the silence stayed loud. Hannah kept trying to fill the space with noise. She'd turn the radio on while cooking, hum to herself while folding towels, suggest we take a weekend trip somewhere. Just the two of us, like old times. But we both knew old times were gone. They hadn't aged, they died. Still, I tried. I really did. One night, while we were sitting on the porch, I said, "Do you ever wonder what we built here? What it was all for?" She didn't answer right away. She was nursing a glass of wine like it might answer for her. Finally she said, "I wanted them to have stability. I wanted someone who wouldn't leave." I nodded. "You got that. But I didn't think they'd make you pay for it." I looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't weak. But she had made peace with being powerless. And in doing so, she had offered me up as the cost of her survival. That's when I realized something ugly. I had been her compromise, not her choice. And compromise, when made in silence, turns to rot. A week later, Zach started asking questions. Not the usual ones. Not chores or budgeting or, how do I fix the garbage disposal? These were different, sharper, quieter. Was Mom always like this with Charlie? What was their marriage like? Why'd she stay so long if he never showed up? I answered the best I could, carefully, respectfully. But one day I said, "You can ask her, you know?" He shook his head. "She won't tell me the truth." I didn't push, but I knew what he was starting to see. The picture behind the picture, the pattern. He wasn't just looking at his past anymore. He was watching the present bend into the same shape, watching his mother live in denial, and watching himself become the collateral. Then came Charlie's offer. I didn't hear it firsthand, but I saw the aftermath. Zach came home one night, pacing, jaw tight, phone clutched in his hand like it was a grenade he couldn't throw. "What happened?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, "Dad says I can come live with him full-time. Said he'll pay for school, help me get a car, give me more freedom." I nodded. "And?" Zach looked me dead in the eye. "I don't believe him." That was the moment I knew the tide had turned. Not because he believed in me, but because he'd finally stopped believing in the myth of Charlie. That man had haunted our house for years. Not as a presence, but as a fantasy. He was the if only, the maybe next time, the man who never stayed long enough to disappoint. But now Zach had tasted what he was really like. The couch, the heatless apartment, the sudden rent charges, and the fantasy had cracked. Truth is heavy. It leaves bruises where delusion once lived. Still, the damage had already been done. Even with Zach working, contributing, respecting the house, the fractures were everywhere. Laura didn't speak to me anymore. She stopped coming home altogether. Hannah said it was just a phase. But I knew better. One night, she called to say she was staying at a friend's again. Then she muttered, half under her breath, half into the phone, "At least he treats me like I matter." Hannah asked who she meant. Laura hung up. She didn't need to explain. We both knew who the he was. Charlie, the prodigal father, back in orbit, whispering the things she wanted to hear, promising the version of love that came without rules or boundaries. I told Hannah, "She'll learn." She said, "You could try harder." I laughed. A sharp, bitter thing. Try harder than 16 years? She looked away. The next week, I found a receipt on the counter. Gas station. $200. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Zach's. "Laura." I asked Hannah about it. She borrowed your card, she said. Just for the weekend. She was stuck. She took it, I corrected. She said she'd pay you back. She won't. Silence. That was when I decided. I called my bank and removed both kids from every authorized line. I updated every password. I shut down the shared Prime, the Hulu, the gym memberships. I cut the grocery auto pay to a budget model. I called the school and made sure all future correspondence came directly to me. And then, quietly, I drafted a lease agreement. Zach already had his. Now Laura would need one, too, if she ever came back. She didn't. Fall came. Leaves browned, curled. Fell. I came home from work one night and found Hannah crying at the dining room table. She held a letter. From Laura's school. Dropped out. Too many absences. No communication. No credits earned. She said she was doing remote learning, Hannah whispered. She was lying, I said. She said Charlie was helping her apply to art programs. I said nothing. She's 19. I can't force her back. Still, she looked at me like I was supposed to do something. Fix it. Absorb it. But I was done absorbing. Zach stayed. Paid rent. Washed his car. Got a job at the tire shop on Route 17. He didn't talk about his sister much. Just once. On a Saturday morning, while we were working under the hood of his car, he said, I think she's waiting for Charlie to become someone he's not. I wiped grease from my hands. She'll wait a long time. He nodded. We didn't say anything else for a while. Later, he added, when you cut me off, I thought you were being cruel. I wasn't. I know. Now I do. He tightened a bolt. You were showing me the price of disrespect. That winter, the house grew quiet. Zach worked. I worked. Hannah existed. She drifted. In and out of conversations. Present but not engaged. One night, I asked her, do you ever regret how we handled this? She shrugged. Handled what? The kids. The lies. The silence. She shook her head slowly. I regret letting them treat you like you were invisible. It wasn't an apology. But it was close. Close doesn't fix things. But it's more than nothing. Laura showed up again in February. She didn't knock. Just stood on the porch with a duffel bag and a look that could cut glass. She'd lost weight. Her makeup was wrong. Too heavy. Too sad. Her hair hung in clumps. She looked like someone who had learned how hard it is to be free when you have nothing to fall back on. I opened the door. She didn't speak. Just stared past me. Where's Mom? She asked. Not home. I need a place to stay. No. Her head jerked. What? I said no. This isn't a shelter. This is a home. And homes come with rules. I'm not Zach. No. You're not. She blinked. You want to come back? I said. Then you pay rent. You do chores. You sign a lease. You follow curfews. I'm not a kid. Then act like an adult. She hesitated. Then scoffed. Whatever. I'll just go back to Dad's. I nodded. Good luck with that. She walked off the porch. I closed the door. Hannah came home 30 minutes later, phone buzzing. She texted me. She said, I know. She's at the bus station. I said nothing. You're really not going to let her stay? She's not staying here unless she wants to live here. Big difference. Hannah's voice dropped. She's our daughter. She's not mine. The silence that followed wasn't angry. It was honest. And that honesty had been missing for far too long. When you love someone, you think sacrifice will be enough. You believe that if you give, eventually you'll be seen, heard, respected. But I've learned something darker, something colder, something true. If you teach people to expect without gratitude, they will forget you ever gave it all. They'll rewrite the story so you were just there, a fixture, a background presence as reliable and invisible as the heating system, until it breaks. Then suddenly you matter again, but only as long as it takes to fix the problem. I was tired of being the fix, so I stopped. The spring thaw came slow, the kind of gray March that doesn't feel like a beginning, just an end that refuses to leave. The driveway was a patchwork of gravel and ice melt, the gutters choked with brittle leaves. The house creaked at night. The heater coughed like an old man trying to clear his throat. It was a house now, not a home. Not anymore. Hannah and I lived like distant tenants. We spoke in quiet logistics, bills, groceries, Zach's hours at the tire shop. She'd leave for work with a quick "see you later." But her eyes never held mine the way they used to. She wasn't cruel. She was somewhere else. And I was no longer chasing her. Some marriages don't end in shouting. They just starve to death. Zach stayed. Still paid rent. Still kept to the rules. If anything, he'd become stricter with himself than I ever asked him to be. He scrubbed his own dishes. Shoveled snow without being told. Took the trash out without reminders. He left notes sometimes. Paid rent Venmo. Let me know if you want it earlier. Or refilled the gas on the mower. Used your can, I'll replace it. I never asked for those notes. But I read every one like a letter from the front lines. And in time, something started to shift. Not loudly. Not in grand gestures. But in the spaces between. We changed the oil on his car together one Saturday. Same cracked driveway. Same crooked tools I'd used on his bikes when he was 11. We worked mostly in silence. Passing the socket wrench back and forth like a peace offering. At one point, he tightened a bolt. Wiped his hands on an old towel and muttered, "I used to think you were just doing all this to control everything. I didn't look up. I know. I thought you liked the power. Liked holding stuff over us." I nodded. "And now?" I asked. He leaned back against the car, sunlight cutting across the side of his face. He looked older than 19. Not in a tired way, in a weathered way. "Now I think you were holding the whole house up," he said. "And I wouldn't even lift my side of the couch." I didn't respond. Not with words. I just passed him the next tool. That night, I wrote a sticky note. Not for him, for me. Zach changed his oil today. Asked for help. Listened. I stuck it to the inside of my desk drawer. A reminder. A timestamp. Proof that some things, given enough silence, grow. The next week, Laura texted Hannah, "I need to come home." I didn't ask why. I didn't care. Hannah looked at me from across the table. Her voice was cautious. "She says she's been staying with a friend, but it's not working out." "Was she with Charlie?" I asked. Hannah shrugged. "She won't say. She doesn't need to come home," I said. "She needs to ask if she can live here." "There's a difference," Hannah whispered. "Exactly." We didn't speak after that. She slept in the other room again. Third time that month. 3 days later, I came home from work and found Laura in the kitchen. She was sitting at the table with a small duffel bag at her feet and a blank stare on her face. Her phone was in her hand, but she wasn't looking at it. Just turning it over and over like she was afraid of what would happen if she stopped. "Where's Mom?" I asked. "Shower," she said. Her voice was small. Younger than I remembered. I stood in the doorway. "Why are you here?" "I need a place to stay." "You had one," I said. She looked up then. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. Not anymore. Maybe she'd run out of tears. "I didn't think it would go like this," she said. "No one ever does." She looked around the kitchen like it belonged to someone she used to know. The fridge still had her old school schedule stuck to it with magnets. The cork board still held a photo of her at age 14. Arms around her mother, glaring at the camera like it owed her an apology. "I don't have anywhere else," she said. "You do," I replied. "But you left them." She stared at me. I stared back. Finally, I said, "You want to live here, you pay rent. You follow rules. You take responsibility for the damage." Her lip trembled. "I don't have any money." "Then you better find a job." She stood up. The chair scraped loud against the tile. "So that's it. That's it." She looked like she wanted to scream, but she didn't. Maybe she knew she'd already spent all her volume. She left. That night, Hannah didn't come home. She stayed at her sister's. I didn't ask when she'd be back. Zach noticed. Of course he did. He asked, once, "Is she leaving?" I shrugged. Wouldn't blame her. "Why not?" "Because I stopped being who she married." He frowned. "That's not true." "Isn't it? You didn't change. You just finally asked for something back. I looked at him. He looked back. That was the first time I saw it, the weight behind his eyes, the understanding, the shift from boy to man, and maybe from tenant to something else. By June, Laura had a job at the corner deli. Minimum wage. Long hours. She still hadn't asked to move back in. But one night, I caught her sitting on the porch. Just sitting. She didn't knock. Didn't try to come inside. She sat there for an hour. I watched through the blinds. She left without saying a word. That was enough for me. Hannah filed for separation in July. No drama. No fights. Just paperwork. She moved in with her sister full-time. Came by once to pick up boxes. Didn't say much. When she left, I stood in the doorway and watched her drive away. No tears. Just that feeling you get when you finally acknowledge a storm's over. Not because the sky's cleared, but because you stopped waiting for rain to mean anything. Zach stayed. On his 21st birthday, we went out for beers. First time I'd had a drink with him like that. Not as a guardian. Not as a provider. Just two men at the bar. Talking. He asked me, "You ever think about starting over? Somewhere else?" I shook my head. No point. Why not? Because people don't start over. They just keep walking. He smiled. "You ever regret staying?" "Yes," I said. "And no." We clinked glasses. I paid the tab. By choice. That's the truth of it, really. I didn't become his father. We didn't become family. We became something else, harder to define, easier to live with. I stopped trying to be a symbol. I stopped buying my seat at the table. And he started pulling his weight. We meet in the middle now, not with titles, not with expectations, but with actions. He checks the mail without being asked. I leave the porch light on if he's working late. He asks me what a mortgage is. I show him the spreadsheet. He folds his own laundry. I let him borrow the truck. We don't call it love, but it looks a lot like it. So here I am, 45, divorced, alone technically, but not hollow, because I don't buy my place anymore. I don't fund my invisibility. I don't let silence be the payment for presence. Every dollar I spend now is deliberate. Every favor is earned. Every gesture is real. Zach's not my son, but he's not a stranger either. We share a roof, and maybe more than that, respect. And as for the others, they faded. Into text threads, occasional voicemails, birthdays missed and not mentioned. Charlie vanished again, his pattern playing out like it always does. Laura moved out of state. Last I heard, she was renting a basement room and working 2 jobs. She never paid me back. But she never asked again either. That counts for something. You might think this story ends in reconciliation. It doesn't. It ends in reality. Not every family heals. Not every child comes back. Not every effort gets thanked. But sometimes, standing up for yourself teaches someone else how to do the same. Sometimes silence breaks the right things. Sometimes saying no is the loudest kind of love. So tell me, was I wrong? Was I heartless to stop feeding a machine that treated me like an engine, not a man? Or was I finally fair? What would you have done? Would you have stayed? Would you have paid? Would you have let them keep your soul, just to keep the peace? Or would you have drawn the line and dared them to notice? Because I did, and I'm still standing.